Researchers who study the brain, the complex organ that controls thought, memory, emotion, touch, motor skills, vision, breathing, temperature, hunger, basically every process that regulates our body, have shared that the number one skill they believe human beings should master is emotional regulation. Humans who learn to regulate emotions can learn to navigate their triggers and not be ruled by them. This is truly power. This doesn't mean that we don't feel, but simply we learn not to react instantly in a situation, unless, of course, it's an emergency. But in general, we don't need to activate our fight or flight response unless there is an immediate threat. Giving ourselves time to process without reacting emotionally puts the responsibility on each of us to regulate what otherwise could be an explosive and ineffective response that might, in fact, lead to more damage to ourselves and others. It certainly can damage the emotional part of our brain, impact our neurology and physical well-being. So, how do we learn the skill of emotional regulation? There are a myriad of ways we can learn and then practice how to regulate our emotions, from deep breathing to counting to stepping away from a situation that we find triggering until we can regroup and return to manage it more productively. Another way is through a disciplined practice. One such discipline, which has been around for centuries but has become a more widespread phenomenon in the U.S., is martial arts. In China, martial arts originated during and this has 4 different pronunciations, so I'll try them all out, Shi, Xia, Xia, Zai dynasty, dating back between 2070 to 1600 BCE. Monks at the Shaolin Temple are often credited with formalizing Kung Fu, combining physical exercises with meditative practices, creating a holistic approach to the art. The evolution of martial arts is closely linked to the Japanese samurai, the warrior class that emerged in the 12th century, and Jiu-Jitsu, one of the earliest Japanese martial arts, which was developed as a method for unarmed combat, complementing the samurai's expertise with swords and other weapons. From 1603 to 1868, during the Edo period, we saw the refinement of jiu-jitsu and the emergence of other styles such as sword fighting and archery. During this time, martial arts training also incorporated elements of Zen Buddhism, emphasizing the importance of mental clarity and spiritual growth. In ancient Greece, pankration was a popular martial art that combined aspects of boxing and wrestling. Introduced in the Olympic Games in 648 BCE, pankration was a brutal and highly effective combat sport, contributing to the formidable reputation of Greek soldiers. In 1914, Masuo Maeda, a Japanese martial artist and expert in judo, arrived in Brazil and settled into Belém do Pará, and he was known as Count Koma. Maeda was significant for introducing judo in that area. It was the grappling-based martial art to Brazil in 1917. Carlo Gracie, together with his brother Elio, and I may have mispronounced his name, began adapting and refining techniques to develop their own style, which would become Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Their unique grappling system emphasized leverage over strength, making it suitable and attractive for smaller practitioners. I love that because leverage over strength really is an equalizer and allows everyone to participate in this type of sport, rather thinking that you have to be powerful when in fact you don't have to be. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social enterprises under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Shirk-Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Small and Gutsy is not just a podcast, but a 501c3 nonprofit. Our vision is to spotlight every smaller nonprofit and social enterprise to raise their visibility. So please help me with our vision and send me any organization you'd like featured to Laura at smallandgutsy.org. This episode actually is sponsored by Do Something Cool Foundation, the organization that has redefined the concept of cool as an ever-changing emblem of authentic individuality and collective action. This translates to play something cool, create something cool, learn something cool. Small and Gutsy is deeply grateful to the Do Something Cool Foundation for seeing our authentic approach to creating something cool. Our cool is truly all the organizations we interview. Thank you, Do Something Cool Foundation. We will try to live up to your definition. So, what happens when you mix the love of Jiu-Jitsu and the love for community? Guardian happens. Guardian was founded by Ben Kovacs and Joel Lunenfield in 2015, initially starting as a single academy in Oakland, California. Their original format supported over 1,000 youth across the Bay Area by providing mentorship, free training, and a welcoming community. From the outset, they envisioned Guardian as more than just a physical space. They aimed for it to have a global impact. In 2020, they introduced the Guardian Scholarship. This initiative was designed to broaden their reach, offering support to children worldwide to engage in training. Leveraging their extensive network of friends and academy partners, they started integrating scholarships within their schools, ensuring that financial barriers would not prevent children from accessing their programs. Their goal is to enable more youth to experience the transformative benefits of Jiu-Jitsu, and it has. Ben is one of the founders of Guardian, where he has been instrumental in shaping the organization's branding and long-term strategy. His involvement in Jiu-Jitsu began in 2006 at Yamasaki Academy, leading to a black belt in 2019. This experience inspired him to create a nonprofit focused on making Jiu-Jitsu training accessible to all. Ben has a background in tech, having worked at Twitter, where he met Joel Lunenfield as co-founder. Both have been deeply committed to the sustainability and mission of Guardian. I am so excited to introduce Ben Kovacs, co-founder of Guardian. My intro talked about the benefits of sort of the mental and physical. And I think when you start with young kids and give them the opportunity, especially Jiu-Jitsu, where it doesn't have to take power in the same way, is such an incredible gift, because you're leveraging something different, but you're also using your brain. I just wanted to say that because it's inspiring. So I'd love for you to talk about your beginnings and how this developed into a passion for you.
So first of all, I would just say that what we do at Guardian is not a unique idea. Most people who train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu consistently and stick with it have had their lives changed. We just basically put the work in to kind of create a framework around it or create a foundation, kind of make it happen and make it into a nonprofit. So many people I talked to were like, oh, I had that same idea, or I wanted to do that someday type thing. And so I just want to put that out there, that I don't think, there was some stroke of genius here. Joel and I met at Twitter when we worked together. He was the head of brand strategy at Twitter. He had a really big job with 100 people on his team. I was telling him about this idea that I had when we were on a plane to CES one year, and we barely knew each other at the time. And he basically came back to me 3 weeks later and he's like, hey, do you want to partner for this idea that you have? And so I think finding that partner sort of helped it get going, because when you have a partner, you don't want to let them down. Mm-hmm. And when you're starting a nonprofit and you have a job and you have, other things going on in your life, it's very easy to just procrastinate and never actually start it. So, I think that was really imperative in getting started. Second thing I would say is that Jiu-Jitsu is something that encompasses many things for many of us that train, meaning it's not just self-defense training. It's not just a community on the mat. It's not just physical health and exercise. It's not just confidence. It's a confluence of all of those different parts coming together to really create something special. And I believe that's why so many people get hooked on it, right? That's why so many people quit other sports or quit some social group that they're in for whatever reason. And we kind of realized early on that Jiu-Jitsu is the thing. If we can just provide Jiu-Jitsu to kids to train, it solves so many of these problems. And a lot of money gets thrown at things like after school study programs for kids or tutoring or learning disabilities, things like that. And what you realize is these kids don't want to go to school for 4, 6, 8, 10 hours a day and then go sit in a classroom and be tutored, right? And it's not going to resonate with them. They need to get out. They need to move their bodies. And so what happens at Jiu-Jitsu is they come to our different academies, and of course they're all different, but this common theme is that they're getting sort of this all-in-one package of feeling good while getting discipline, while gaining confidence, while meeting friends. And that's just super important. And unfortunately, despite the fact that Jiu-Jitsu is a simple sport where you're on the mats and you're wrestling around, something that people have been doing for tens of thousands of years, it's become an elitist sport in many parts of the US, meaning it's $200 a month, $300 a month. And now you have a single mom or just a middle-class family with 2 or 3 kids, and they're like, I can't afford $750 a month for my 3 kids to train Jiu-Jitsu twice a week. Right. And so we kind of looked at that and thought, this is crazy. Like, this should not be something that creates that much of a barrier to entry. We're not playing polo. We don't need to get a kid a horse. We're not, sending them to tournaments 2 hours away to go ice skating and buy rink time for ice hockey.
Right.
Why is jiu-jitsu becoming an elitist sport? This is the sport that shouldn't be elitist. And so that was really why we created Guardian, and it's really worked and it's really resonated with people.
It's beautiful. I wonder if you can share, you've done a little bit in terms of like the community and moving your body, and I completely agree with you. I wish it were a required course in our public schools. Wouldn't that be really interesting if it were integrated into our public schools? It would be amazing. I feel like there's aspects to it, and I don't know enough about it, obviously, where kids learn to manage conflict differently, that the mind and the body sort of converge together. And I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit and what that looks like in terms of maybe how somebody starts and how they get hooked and why it's such a significant part of people's lives when they're in it.
I don't know if I have any sort of like advanced science or insights around this that you don't, but we've tried to, I think, change a lot of human nature over the last couple of decades. We've tried to make boys less aggressive. We tried to get people to talk about their feelings. We tried to get people to just sort of all agree that we're going to live in this kumbaya world of different things. And the truth is, it's just like not how people are wired, Kids don't want to sit in a seat. Boys are going to be more aggressive typically than girls. Like, there's just certain kind of facts of life. And we can either, I think, tell little boys that they're bad and that they need to sit down and they need to know their place and that they don't need to use their strength, or we can like help them become strong, capable young men and also young women who like leverage what they need to do with their bodies, right? And I just think that you're seeing, I think, some sort of like a return to normalcy with certain aspects of life right now, where like there's some things that were being pushed for a long time in various politicals and school type situations. But, I think in general, jiu-jitsu is sort of like reflective of life, right? It's a real thing. It's a real test. When you get out there on the mat, there's nobody blaming the referee, really. There's no one saying like, oh, the coach put his son to be the quarterback of the football team.
Right.
Like, jiu-jitsu is a pretty like democratic sport in that way, as long as you can get the kids and the adults on the mat, because whoever wins, right? You can't say, oh, that guy beat me because his dad was the coach or played. That kind of things don't happen.
Right.
So I think those type of sports like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, et cetera, can be very good for kids because it shows them, hey, like if you work hard, there's nothing that's going to stop you from taking your rightful place here, right? And if you don't work hard, there's really nobody for you to blame.
I think it's a lesson in accountability, like basic good accountability is what I'm hearing you say, which is really wonderful.
And there's no easy button for it. The reason Mark Zuckerberg trains jiu-jitsu is because it's the only thing in life he can't buy. He can't buy a black belt, right? He can't buy training with another guy and getting dominated by him or not, right? He has to train and he has to put the work in. And despite being worth $250 billion, he just can't like fake that, right? Tom Hardy, Keanu Reeves, Mario Lopez, like the list just goes on and on and on of these celebrities who have chosen to get on the mats, get choked out by other people, get a black eye now and then. It's because they want that thing that they, people don't want the easy button all the time. They want to work for certain things in life, and that's what jiu-jitsu provides.
Well, I think, as you just said, when you work for something, it builds your self-esteem. Whether you lose or win, of course you want to win when you're on the mat, but whether you lose or win, you show up. And showing up is a big part of that. And then, as you said, putting in the work.
Yeah.
And so you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. That's just part of life. So I think you're right. It's reflective of life, and it is very democratic because you use your own leverage. You use your own weight and understand and learn your body in a particular way.
And no matter how good you are at other sports, when you show up to jiu-jitsu, you lose the first day, the first week, the first month. And of course, if LeBron James starts jiu-jitsu, like he's going to get good like a lot quicker than you or I.
Yeah.
But he's still going to lose probably to someone half of his size for the first, month until he starts to figure it out a little bit.
Yeah.
And so the people that can't handle that, they quit, right? They come to one class, they get beat up, they don't want to come back, right? And so it kind of weeds out most of the bad apples. Like, most people are pretty cool after a certain time because they're the people that have been able to stick with it. Of course, there's exceptions certainly to that rule, but like it's a pretty cool thing because it just sort of forces everyone to be a beginner, and they have to have some level of letting go of that ego to be able to tap to people who are smaller than them, weaker than them, maybe a different sex than them. And if they can't handle that, they can't come back.
I love that. I think it's the greatest equalizer I can think of from a sports perspective, right? It's truly a good equalizer.
And also with kids, little girls, before
Yeah.
puberty, girls and boys are essentially the same in
Mm-hmm.
jiu-jitsu. Until they hit like 12, 13 years old, 8-year-old girl and 8-year-old boy is essentially a same matchup. So it really teaches girls that they can compete with boys
Mm-hmm.
and that they are strong and they can, do well. And it also teaches boys, hey, like girls are people to be respected too, right?
Right.
Like they're not just somebody I can easily walk through or whatever. So I think it's a really great thing for kids, especially at that early age to do jiu-jitsu because they've learned that confidence and that respect on each side.
Yeah. What age do you generally start? What's ideal?
Well, typically you can't start a kid until like 5 years old or so, 6 years old. But really, it's not because of like the physical. It's because they can't pay attention. Meaning, like
Mm,
if you have a 4-year-old kid and they're disrupting the class completely, they can't follow the moves or whatever. Like it's not that their bodies are like getting injured or can't handle like the tumbling or whatever aspect of jiu-jitsu. It's just that they can start sort of once they can pay attention enough to the teacher and not be disruptive to the other 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds in class.
So you put age combinations together, it's based on level. Like it's a beginning class, or how do you do that?
Yeah, it's kind of different everywhere, but typically you're going to have ages of groups of kids. So you might have like a 5 to 8-year-old program, and then you might have a 9 to 12-year-old program, and then you might move a kid who's 7.5 years old who's been training for 2 years into the higher program if like they're just too good for the other kids. And then when people compete, whether they're kids or adults, they compete on belt level and on size typically. So for example, in the adults divisions now, there's just many different divisions. They have sort of white, blue, purple, brown, black. So you have 5 belts, and then you have divisions of those based on weight. And then you have masters divisions. So once people hit a certain age, they start going to masters 1, masters 2, masters 3. So you don't have like a 62-year-old guy training jiu-jitsu, right? Train against a 25-year-old guy on steroids.
Right. That could be dangerous. What's the oldest person you've ever trained or who's been part of your academy?
I don't know. I guess I've trained with guys into their 70s now.
That's great. And is it people who've just started or have been involved in martial arts?
I think a combination of both. You see some guys who are sort of just starting and just kind of want to get out there on the mats or maybe want a little social interaction. And then you see a lot of people who maybe started training when they were my age and they just kind of stuck with it. And, now maybe they've transitioned to more of a hobbyist. And then you see people actively competing into their 60s. So it's really
great.
all over the place. But, I think there's going to be a new movement in jiu-jitsu where I kind of consider it like this barbell approach where you have the kids and you've got like these older adults. And I think that there's going to be, obviously, it just makes sense over time. You're going to have more of those people become those older adults of jiu-jitsu.
Right. It's just a matter of time. That's true. That's a really interesting thing. So do you start separating boys and girls when they hit puberty? Is that sort of the marker for you or not necessarily?
No, I mean, a lot of gyms don't separate boys and girls at all ever,
Yeah.
It just depends. But just kind of making the point that once a boy is 18 and a girl's 18, then you're going to start to get that typical size, strength separation.
Yeah.
Versus like, you have 2 7-year-olds training. You don't have that dynamic yet.
Right.
There's some girls that are incredible now in jiu-jitsu. There's women. I've been training for 19 years. I'm 185 pounds. I'm a black belt. There are some girls that can beat me in jiu-jitsu for sure.
That's
like some of like the
amazing.
top women in the world.
Yeah.
Like all of the top 10 could beat me for sure. And then you've got like a group that's probably pretty equal. So it's not like just because I'm 40, 50 pounds heavier. I mean, these girls are training 6, 7 hours a day, right? These good girls. So
Wow.
it's not impossible for that to happen at all.
So when someone trains 6 or 7 hours, they're taking this sport to another level where they're really looking for competition and they're really looking at as a career for them.
I mean, 6 to 7 hours is a bit of an exaggeration. They're not training jiu-jitsu probably for that long, but they are spending 6, 7, 8 hours doing jiu-jitsu, right? You have their nutrition. They might do 2 classes in a day. They might be then drilling a specific move for an hour. And then they might be doing strength and conditioning, weightlifting for an hour. And they might be running for an hour, right? So there's those type of people who are like full on, dedicating their life to train in competitions
Yeah.
and compete and win medals. That was never really my thing to me because I started jiu-jitsu, I think, as a 24-year-old adult. I was already had a job. I was already out of college, already had a house, whatever. I wasn't, hey, this is going to be the thing I make a living at. It was like, hey, this is going to be a thing that's fun where I meet some new people and that I can learn some self-defense. And I just kind of never quit. But I've always had that mentality, like the tournament's not the win, it's the other stuff.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you're promoting. It's all the other stuff you gain from this rather than the win or the competition is important for the nature of understanding sort of the equalizer factor, but it doesn't have to be the goal. The goal has to be continuing a process that you live by. So talk to me a little bit about that. So it's an entire philosophy. It's an entire way of life.
First of all, by the way, I would say it's like not that different than a lot of sports when you think about it. Like think about golf. Think about swimming. How many people golf and they're terrible at golf, right? They're average at golf and they love golf. They don't go out to golf because they're going to be a PGA Tour player. A lot of them pick it up
Right.
later in life, but it gives them exercise. It gives them a community. It gives them something to do instead of sitting in front of the TV. So it's not like a unique concept to jiu-jitsu. It's just that unfortunately, I think in jiu-jitsu, the competitors get too much of the attention sometimes instead of the people who are doing like amazing things off the mat or helping other people or good training partners. And I think that's the thing that's going to probably change over time, right? Because nobody cares about the guy who won the purple belt world championships at 23 years old by 2 advantage points. Instead, I'm much more interested in like the hedge fund guy that has a family that donates $100,000 a year to help other people get into jiu-jitsu and is a great training partner for his friends. And everybody smiles when they see him walk in the door at the academy.
Yeah. So talk to me about the philosophy of what the academy teaches that inspires that individual.
First of all, there's a ton of difference. If you walked into 10 different jiu-jitsu schools, you'd see 10 different ways of doing business. You'd see 10 different mentalities. When I started jiu-jitsu, it was a little bit more like generally hardcore, meaning like you walked in there, you kind of got thrown into the class, and by the end of the class, you were already sparring with people, just sort of trying to figure it out. That's what we call fighting in jiu-jitsu, right? There's a lot of people saying, is it fighting? It's not really fighting, right? It's jiu-jitsu, and essentially you're trying to submit the other person with some sort of move and or control them. And that's really kind of the win, right? Is controlling them and eventually submitting them. And the beauty of it is you're tapping before you get hurt versus other sports like boxing or even taekwondo, kickboxing, where you're actually getting injured because, you're punching each other in the face and the win is like knocking that person out, breaking their nose, whatever, hurting them.
Right.
So it's a beautiful sport for that reason. However, what I would say to your question about like this philosophy and everything is there's a lot of horrible jiu-jitsu schools out there. And there's a lot of horrible people who own jiu-jitsu schools. A lot of the best people in the world actually are just absolutely scumbag human beings that have unfortunately kind of made it to the top and sort of developed these cult followings. I don't know the percentage, but I would say it's like 30-40% of jiu-jitsu schools are probably run by like semi-bad people. And by bad people, I mean, they demand respect from their students. They're kind of financially grifty with certain ones. They might prey on the female students at the gym using their sort of power. I mean, it's a lot of power when you think about it, right? You're running an academy as this like black belt who's really good at this sport, who's a very tough, typically man, almost always, right? And then you have these 25-year-old women, 18-year-old girls, whatever, coming into the gym. And, they look up to you as sort of this teacher, and a lot of them take advantage of that situation.
Right.
So it's a very like, there is, I would say, like a dark side when it's not managed well to a lot of these jiu-jitsu academies and a lot of sad stories of that. And it's very important that people, I think, choose the right schools and also don't idolize the jiu-jitsu leaders as people who are leaders of life or experts in life just because they're experts in jiu-jitsu. And unfortunately, a lot of these kind of Brazilian, especially like jiu-jitsu instructors, even American jiu-jitsu instructors, they sometimes confuse the fact that they're really good at jiu-jitsu with being really good at life.
Oh, I love that you said that. Number one, because the purpose, the way you present it, is to equalize things, not to take advantage of someone who's vulnerable. And so if you don't carry that philosophy from the very first class all the way through as part of your academy, you are doing a disservice both to the sport, the community, and obviously the people you harm. So I love that you've said that. So I would love for you, if you can, to walk me through that first class. I'm new, I'm coming in, I put on my white belt. And so walk me through what I might experience.
First of all, there's 2 types of jiu-jitsu now. There's gi and no gi. So the traditional stuff that you hear about and you see in a lot of the pictures, you're wearing a kimono, a gi, right?
Right.
Similar to judo. Now, no gi jiu-jitsu has become extremely popular because of the rise of the UFC and the rise of competition jiu-jitsu tournaments like ADCC and CJI. And so that's where you're typically wearing like a rash guard, right? Shorts, rash guard, spats, whatever. They're very different, very similar, obviously, but very different in the sense like you have nothing to grab onto in no gi. So first thing is when you come to a school, it's like, are we doing gi or are we doing no gi? Because you have to have a kind of a completely different outfit for either one. And then like I was kind of saying before is every school has a very, very different onboarding process for new students. So for example, some schools don't let you actually spar for the first 6 months. So they take you over to the side and they have a beginner only class that you can attend. So they might have 3 beginner only classes a week and you can only attend the beginner only classes. Or they have classes and they pull you off to the side and they say, hey, like you're just going to work on this first set of moves one of the students over here to just kind of get a feel for what this feels like. Others are like, dude, just get into class and figure it out. That was kind of how I started. So
Interesting.
it's very different, I would say. I would say that most schools are starting to realize that jiu-jitsu is a business for them and that they want to retain students. So they're starting to make more moves to like, you don't want to throw someone into the deep waters on their first day, get beat up, and then, you know, they leave there going, wait a second, I got injured on my first day. This is not for me, right?
Right.
And so it's a very tricky balance for them because the school doesn't give the student enough action and they don't make them feel like what jiu-jitsu really is. They might be like, oh, this is boring. I don't want to just come there and do techniques on the side with some blue belt all day.
Right.
But if they throw them into the deep waters, they might, you know.
Right. It's a balance, it sounds like.
And you might show up to jiu-jitsu as someone who's wrestled in college, right? And you might be an amazing grappler already, but just not know the jiu-jitsu part. Like they're going to pick it up almost instantaneously, right? Or you could be someone who's terrible at every sport, has zero athletic ability, isn't in shape. Now it's a totally different situation. So it's very dependent on who that person is, what that school wants to do. There is no sort of, you walk in, this is how it works at every school, standard protocol, et cetera.
So in your school, let's focus on the kids because that's really where your energy is, it sounds like, in terms of growing the nonprofit and really helping all kids have access, which is a fabulous mission. So let's say there's a group of 6, 7-year-olds who are together, or 6, 7, 8. What's their first experience like? And do they usually do gi or no gi? Or does it just totally depend?
So we operated a gym in Oakland for the first 5, 6 years of the nonprofit. But, you know, my vision was always that we would expand to a more like global footprint where we would, you know, being in tech and working with big companies and stuff, everything was about scale, right? How can I get more scale on what I'm spending? How can I get more bang for my buck? If I'm going to do something and put an hour of effort into it, how can I make that go 100 times farther than doing it manually?
Yeah.
And so I looked around and I thought, what are the pain points of running a gym? Insurance, cleaning, front desk person, rent, utilities, instructors who are always whining and wanting things.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to be in this business. This is a terrible business in some ways. Most, you know, some gyms do really well, but it's a very hard business for many gyms if they don't have those things figured out.
Right.
Or you don't have someone who owns the gym who just wants to work 10 hours a day and do it all themselves and do it right.
Right.
And so I thought, well, there's 50,000 gyms all over the world or so. Why are we not activating our program and our philosophy into these gyms? They already have mats. They already have instructors. They already have websites. They already have whatever, right? A community started. And so we really changed our model to focus on going into gyms, both in the United States where gyms wanted to have a Guardian program.
Great.
And internationally. And so we sort of operate differently, whether it's a US gym or an international gym. In the US, we essentially lend our nonprofit to them. So we say, hey, like you can be part of the Guardian program. You don't have to create your own nonprofit. You don't have to create your own branding. You can separate it from your existing school so you're not cannibalizing your youth students and saying, oh, we have a free kids program. It's a special Guardian program.
Right.
And those gyms can have between, 1 and 50 kids usually training in those in the Guardian program. So essentially it's almost like a mini nonprofit, like a franchise. They don't pay us a franchise fee, but it's like a franchise almost to be able to have a Guardian program.
That's great.
And then internationally, what we do is we look for gyms who have started and they have the right people working at them. They have the right ethos, but they don't have the ability to really grow them. And I'll give you 2 examples of that. So Guardian Peru started because there was a guy in Peru that I actually used to train with 19 years ago when I started, who moved back to Peru. He was a great guy. He wanted to start this social project for kids. He had 3 or 4 or 5 kids training for free. And it was clear that he wanted to do this for the right reasons. And we said, well, what if we made you a Guardian program and then you could grow from there with a little bit more resources? And now today he has about 90 kids training in his program.
That's great.
All because we gave him this branding, we gave him this platform. And about 3 months ago, we brought, the biggest jiu-jitsu star in the world down to meet him and tour his academy. And now they're going to be investing in his academy. And so it's kind of like this partnership where we find these amazing people, almost like a venture capitalist finds an amazing founder and says, I want to bet on you.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to give you a little bit of money. And if you do good, I could give you more money.
Yeah.
I could give you more resources. But, we're not going to risk everything on you until you kind of do the things that we need you to do to be successful and show that you can do it. We're not going to build you a school because you have an idea that you want a school.
Right.
Like do the hard work and get started. Now we've done this in Ethiopia.
Oh, wow.
We found actually on Reddit, there was a gym who was training kids for free in Ethiopia. And we reached out and said, you seem like you're doing great work and you care. What if we could help you out even more? Fast forward to today, and Calder, who works with me on my team, is over in Ethiopia telling the story of what they're doing. And they have 50 kids or so training there now for free because of the Guardian program.
I love it. So you really are spreading your wings in so many ways from where you were to where you are today. So for kids who enroll in your program, it's free for them. How do they learn about you, or do you reach into the community and say, we're a free program to offer sports for kids who can't otherwise afford it, and this is the sport that we're doing?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about these international programs and what's actually a lot harder in the US. When you're in the US, in let's say Monterey, where we have a school, the guy who runs our Monterey Academy is an amazing guy, but it's very hard for him to get students there because it's not walkable for most students.
Right.
And even if he offers free jiu-jitsu, a parent or guardian needs to bring those kids there. It's very hard for that to happen. And the kids have Starbucks, phones, PlayStations, what TVs, Netflix. And unfortunately, a lot of them, I think, just kind of choose that easier path. They're not as motivated. Now, when you look at Ethiopia or Peru or some of these international academies, these kids will bike an hour to get to the gym. They'll walk 45 minutes to get there. The towns are typically small. Everyone knows the program is there by word of mouth because all the people are talking to each other. Versus, I just think it's just like a much easier fit sometimes, and the money goes so much farther. And that's why we've started concentrating so much of our effort there, because for $2,000, let's say a month in one of those locations, we can support 100, 200 kids training and having a whole program versus having to market it in the US, figure out a transportation situation, pay rent, pay insurance, pay workers' comp. It's very hard to run these businesses often in the US.
Yeah, it's true. And the nonprofit is even harder.
But we tell our schools, we go, look, just have your doors open, right? It's almost like, when you see like a pride flag, a gay pride flag on a business. They're not saying like you have to be gay to come in here. They're just saying like, we're open to people that this flag resonates with. And that's the way I think about the Guardian flag in a way, or the Guardian banner. It's like, hey, you put the Guardian banner up, it makes it known that you're open to these conversations. A parent who can't afford to train their kids, or whatever it is, a donor who wants to support a program to help kids. And, I think it's like that level of acceptance, and at least just having that door open and offering it so that, once a year when that parent does find you that needs help, you've got that program to offer. And maybe that gives them the courage to actually speak up and say, hey, I'd love to take advantage of this program if my kid can get in here, right?
Yeah, it's great because you really are creating a brand that is becoming more and more known for being accepting and walk in and check it out. Do you sometimes then have folks who come in who can afford it, and then they can also participate, but they would be a paying client in that context?
Exactly. I mean, we encourage our academies. First of all, we let them run however they want to run. We don't tell them like, this is how many kids you have to have in. This is where you have to cut people off. You have to ask for documentation if they're actually low income or not.
Right.
They can do whatever they want as far as who they select for the students. Because in our philosophy is like, even if you get one student, that's great, right? Like, let's just get one. And let's get two, whatever. But this was a big problem for us when we had the gym in Oakland, to be honest. If you think about it logically, the parents who are actually more well-resourced are typically going to be savvier about finding these things and sort of finding a loophole and saying, oh, well, why would I go over here to train when I could get a free gym over here? And eventually started seeing a couple kids' parents pull up with like Range Rovers and you're like, wait a second. Like,
it's not why we're doing it.
Yeah. But it's on the flip side, if you ask for a bunch of things, then, the undocumented illegal parent is not going to put their kids in the program because they don't have tax returns and they don't have stuff. So it's like, we just sort of wrote it off that like 20% of people are going to take advantage of this. It is what it is, or 10%. It's not worth policing it sometimes for that one person who's going to slip through the cracks. If they really want to take advantage of it, whatever.
Right.
I encourage most gyms to just kind of cap the number and say, hey, we have 10 scholarship spots or something like that. And these are reserved for these folks rather than curating like a free-for-all type thing. So we learned a lot over the years of different ways we can mitigate it. And then, of course, today we leave it up to the schools. And then again, in these international areas, it's basically like no one can afford it. So it makes it pretty easy. When you're in Ethiopia.
Right. There's more of an equal, unfortunately, from their perspective. Everybody's in the same boat. So these gyms operate independently and they have your program, they have your branding, they have your support in a lot of ways. You mentioned before that so many jiu-jitsu programs can operate very differently in terms of the execution of what they're teaching. Is there some commonality when it has the Guardian brand or the name associated that you absolutely want to make sure that they include or have as part of their program? And I know you're not dictating their program, but I just am trying to think about, you have these scholarships and you've got these spots, which I think is a good idea because then you do in the US at least have people who pay and that can offset it. But is there an approach that is consistent throughout the Guardian brand?
I would say no. I mean, all we do is really offer advice or solutions when the academies come to us and say, hey, like, I'm having this problem. Like, what could I do? Right. I have 4 kids, parents who I don't think should be in the program. Do you have any ideas of how I can message this better or something like that? But it's very important to us. You know, these are people with a lot of pride. They open a gym, they're a small business. The idea of us telling them you need to run your program this way, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, and one of the things we're finding in the US, frankly, is that these gyms are having a hard time offering this free kids program in a lot of places. It's too much work, meaning they have to message it, they have to create the space, they have to do all this stuff. So you have this significant amount more people who want to give to the Guardian program or they want to get kids into jiu-jitsu. They just don't have the bandwidth and capacity to run our program at their gyms. So what we're doing now for this year in 2025 is we're making a big push to go into those gyms and say, look, instead of cannibalizing your kids program, I know you're barely able to make any money here. You're struggling to pay rent. You're struggling to grow your program, whatever it is, advertise on Google, deal with ridiculous city and county or whatever inspectors and everybody who's just breathing down your neck, wanting more all the time. Instead of dealing with that, why don't you just put our banner up and why don't you help raise money for another Guardian program, almost like a pen pal. So put the banner up and when people come in and say, hey, I want to come to the open mat, or I want to do a drop-in class, you could say, hey, like, you don't have to pay. It's all good. But if you want to, we partner with the Guardian program and you can donate and sponsor a kid to train jiu-jitsu for a month for free or whatever the thing is, right?
Perfect.
Or buy a Guardian t-shirt or something like that. And I think, you know, if you think about it logically, there's 43,000 gyms now. What do we have? 17 in the US and 5 international? So if you think about it, if we could just go activate 100, 500, 1,000 of those gyms to become Guardians, what we could do with that money and with those resources would be really significant. And I think we've almost done a poor job, frankly, of like pushing a hard program down their throat for many of them and saying like, you need to open up your doors, you need to become a Guardian, you need to do this and that. And so many of them come back to us after 6 months and they're like, Ben, I only have 2 kids training in the program. I'm doing everything I can, but like, it's kind of frustrating. And now I've got parents reaching out, but like, they can't get the kids here. And so I'm starting to think like, maybe we're approaching this wrong because of the success of the international academies or certain special academies like Guardian LA. Maybe we should be focusing them to push their resources to the things that are working instead of trying to make it work within their space.
I like that you're open to iterating. So if it's not working, you're thinking, okay, how can we actually keep the resources there or bring more in that are very specific? But what I'm hearing you say is how do we get engagement from the community where the gym is situated and have them have a little bit of accountability or connection to the scholarship program. And in that way, it sort of is a win-win for everybody. And the onus isn't on the gym itself, which sounds very taxing for them. When you go into a gym to take a look at what their program is, do you vet them in terms of, I guess, the way they approach jiu-jitsu? Or is there so many kind of similarities that you don't really need to do that?
As far as like the curriculum or as far as like...
Yeah, I think the curriculum. The other stuff I think you can work with as, you know, trying to help them market and sort of the rest of it. And the reason I'm asking is because I understand sort of the approach of being very democratic. I love the idea that it is a sport where you have a piece of accountability and you have to work hard at it. I love all those features for kids and adults, frankly, but it's great when you start at a young age. I love that when people get hooked, they're really hooked and it's a whole lifestyle kind of component where you think about all of these things. And I think there is a huge mental component, sort of mental resilience, strength. I'm not really sure, but that's sort of embedded in a certain component of martial arts. And it's not, to me, it doesn't sound like a manipulation. It sounds like a really integrous approach to one's body and one's ability. And even if some women early on came in, or you did even for self-defense, it sort of turned into something of a lifestyle, something where you saw the benefit, but you also wasn't just going into the gym. It sort of translated into other parts of your life. So I guess the question in this long-winded discussion about it is that when you go into a gym and say, hey, we'd love to put a Guardian program in here, we're thinking about it this way. Do you look and see, because you did mention that there are some gyms that are poorly run and just not good people and you don't want to be associated with them. So do you vet them a little bit
The first thing that we do historically is almost all of the academies that we have come from a network of people to start. And what I mean by that is our second academy was Baltimore. It was started by Carlos Raba, who was one of my best friends for 20 years. So that was easy, right? I didn't have to question his moral integrity or love of the community. We've been talking about it for years, starting it, right?
Yep.
Our Culiacan, Mexico academy is Carlos's friend from growing up who I'd already started a kids program there and needed help. And so we started working with him.
Great.
The Peru Academy is my friend who I knew 19 years ago when I started training, and he moved back to Peru.
Yeah.
Now, Guardian Ethiopia, we found on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the way we think about it is like, this program's already like started, right? If this guy's a bad guy, he's going to take advantage of children, whatever the thing is, he's bad with women. Like that's already happening. Like we're not like facilitating that, right? We're not like buying him a building and giving him a private room to do those things.
Right.
So we're not really stopping that, I guess you would say. I guess you could say we're enabling it, but we're not, it's happening if somebody has those intentions.
Right.
And so what we do is we basically start off really small with the people that we don't know, especially, and we're like, hey, we're going to give you $100 a month, right? With $100 a month, it's not going to change a lot, but here's what we need you to do for that. We need you to give us this amount of content back. We need to see that you're growing your program by a small amount. And if that goes well, the next step will be to do X, Y, Z, right? And it's not always financial. Sometimes it's like, in the case of Ethiopia, they're like, we can't get mats here. 400% import tariffs on mats.
Wow.
So even if we bought $5,000 worth of mats, it would cost us $20,000 to get them into the country.
Yeah.
And so the first thing with Ethiopia was, how do we get them not training on concrete and rugs and puzzle mats and get them something where people are not going to get injured?
Yeah.
I mean, how crazy is that? So it's like, it just is a different thing for every academy, if that makes sense, as far as like what they need, how we vet them, how we start small and then grow with them. And we really try to kind of mitigate any potentials. And if we see somebody who we think, we just let go of an academy like 3 months ago that was in Texas. And basically the guy who was running it, we didn't know well. We gave him an opportunity to become a Guardian. He started to raise money through the Guardian sort of name and platform. And he just wasn't bringing kids into the program. And we were like, hey man, like this isn't like a financial grift. We're not going to support you making money off our name while you're not doing the work that you have to do. So he did that for 6 months or whatever. He probably raised a few $1,000s, not a lot of money. And we said, hey, like, just do your own thing. You're not going to be a Guardian anymore. Take down the sign. We take him off our website, and that's it. So we don't have a lot of risk, I guess, from like a vetting perspective, if that makes sense. It's really like that person essentially taking advantage of something for a very small amount of time in like their local community, right? And it's not taking our resources away from the other schools.
You totally answered the question. That is a form of vetting. You have a system in place that I'm guessing was either organically developed, as you said, from your network, and now you're expanding more. But you're not afraid to put a boundary up and say, nope, this isn't really working for us because you're not able to produce in the way that our vision is. And your vision is to reach as many kids who need it, who are marginalized or from under-resourced communities, so they have an opportunity to learn this sport and better themselves through the experience of learning this sport. So it's not complex in that way, but it becomes complex. And so I love that in some way, Guardian has become, through its name and branding and recognition, a benefactor of sorts, but with reliable metrics, however you want to frame it. And so you do go in, and the mat story in Ethiopia is such an amazing one, because to those of us in this country, we may not even realize that the tariffs are so high, or that the government will go, if you send something over, might intercede and take certain things. And so it rarely may get to where the end point is. So I appreciate and really admire the iteration that you yourself have gone through, from owning your own gym to like, how do we do this program and where do we do it in places where we know the output is what we're expecting from the input that we're providing, whether it is financial support or a combination of things, or using our name or building on the capacity that we've created in our brand. So I love all that, and you've done it. And in essence, that's what you're offering. You're offering an opportunity for these kids to have a sport in their lives that is accessible, one they can grow with, and where they can learn both the ability and success if they put in the hard work. And it is, in fact, an equalizer when you're able to do that. So in some way, if I can make the association, you're living jiu-jitsu by the way you're operating your business, right? You're creating an equalizer, which is the essence of the sport. When you talk about leveraging and not needing to have the power or the physical power necessarily to do that. And so I would make that connection. I think you're living that philosophy through Guardian, through having created this methodology, frankly, which is incredible.
Well, I share a shared passion. This might upset you since you have a nonprofit, you work in the nonprofit world, but I despise most nonprofits. I absolutely despise bureaucracy. I'm a doer. I'm not the most successful person in the world by any metric, but when I have ideas, I try them, I put some effort in, I put some money in, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And most of these jackasses, they sit there and they pontificate, right? This is why people like with Harvard MBAs and stuff typically like don't start companies, right? They go work for somebody as like a number 3 or a number 5 or a number 62 is because you can theorize about life all day and all the things you want to do to help and write research papers and do all this thinking and planning and talk to consultants. It's just ridiculous, right? And like Dana White hates nonprofits for this reason because most of them are a grift. Most of them they're just like wasting money on dumb stuff, right? They're not like moving forward. And so I just believe so much in this idea that you put one foot in front of another, you go forward, you figure it out. You don't have to have experience doing that. You don't have to talk to 62,000 people in order to like make your first step.
Right.
And I think that's like basically the philosophy of Guardian, which is just like move forward, figure it out as you go.
Yep.
You're going to make a few mistakes, but you don't need to like hire 32 consultants to like tell you about the mistakes you might make. Just move forward and get going, right? Whether it's the vetting process, whether it's not asking the parents for financial documentation to get going, like make it easy, make it good, and stay tight. Like one of those mistakes we made in the past is we try to do everything to appease all the quote unquote, like social justice warrior types. So you need to have a psychologist on staff for the kids. You need to do a movement for BLM, a homeless drive thing, and you need to do this. So you know what happened? We did a homeless drive during BLM. It was a bunch of like rich white hipsters that showed up and took all the free toilet paper and paper towels, right?
Oh, that's depressing. Wow.
I got so pissed about it. And I said, like, we are not a nonprofit for everybody.
Right.
We're not a nonprofit to check boxes. We're a nonprofit to actually do the work that we want to do, which is to get kids into jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is the nonprofit. Jiu-jitsu training with consistency, 365 days a year, rain or shine, any weather, like that's the beauty of the sport, right? That a kid can be depressed, they can show up there, they can get picked on in school, they can hate their teacher, they can have no parents, one parent, a mean parent, a bad stepdad, and they can come to jiu-jitsu and for an hour and a half, they don't think about any of that stuff, right?
That's the beauty.
And I think that we miss all these things because we get so wrapped up in all of this theory and like nonprofit world and all the things we need to do instead of just like actually doing the real work.
Right.
And this is happening in corporate America, by the way. Like you see people like Elon Musk talk about this. He's like, I don't care where you went to college. Let me see the code that you wrote. That's what I want. Like you're starting to see this like transformation where people are sick of the middle managers and the grift and all the things that go along with it. And they want to see like, who are the doers, right?
Right.
And I just think that jiu-jitsu is such a perfect sport that it's emblematic of that. Sorry for my rant, but it's just frustrating sometimes when I see the American Cancer Society or the United Way, raising billions or hundreds of millions of dollars and giving 10% of it to something, it just drives me nuts.
I really appreciate your honesty. And look, the way I started Small and Gutsy is it was during COVID and I was really targeting these smaller nonprofits and I'd never done a podcast, didn't even, this was before every celebrity in the world did a podcast. I was just trying to elevate folks who I thought were doing good work and give them a platform that were the smaller ones. So I appreciate and love that. And I have to say that just like in the gyms that you've been exposed to, or even in jiu-jitsu globally, maybe more nationally, there are bad actors, right? There are really bad actors even in your business, and there are in the nonprofit world. We're both in that same business. But in the nonprofit world, in the gym world, in the sports world, there are bad actors. And then there are some really amazing actors. People who really get out there and do what they say they're going to do. Those are the ones I hope I highlight the most. And do they have to live within that bureaucratic framework? Well, that's why I really started Small and Gutsy, because nonprofits can't use any public dollars if they get them for marketing. Name one corporation, one business, one tiny little hole-in-the-wall store at your corner market that doesn't advertise, whether they open their doors, put a sign, put flyers out, whatever they do in order to get business. You can't survive without marketing in a way. And in some way, your brand allows that for people to do that within the gyms that you feel are decent gyms and doing a good job. And so I appreciate the rant because I think there is abuse in every industry. in the for-profit industry, we know it exists, but it certainly exists in the nonprofit industry.
There's abuse, but I think the word I'm trying to say is like the hypocrisy, right? When people stand up on their pedestal and they pretend to be holier than thou and smarter than everyone. And meanwhile, they're getting paid, $500,000 a year to run some organization that has no impact on anybody, but lines their pocket, right? I think that's the frustration.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's why a lot of nonprofit people, you talk to a lot of smart people out there and wealthy people, especially like the younger generation, I would say, of like these new people who are making money in their 30, 40, 50. They're like just donating to where like their father or mother donated to, right? They're not just like drinking the same Kool-Aid. They're like, I work in a data-driven tech company. I make my decisions based on data and based on other things. Why would I donate to somewhere where I give $1 and 10 cents goes to the mission or 20 cents, right? Like, how do I change that? How do I donate the $1 that goes 92 cents goes to the mission or whatever? So, and that's why I don't go to like nonprofit fundraising events anymore and all this stuff, because it was just like a big circle jerk where people were just telling each other how great they were. And like, it was just all based on like the wrong reasons I felt like. And I kind of doubled down on this idea for us anyway. It's like, people who do jiu-jitsu get that they love jiu-jitsu. The UFC understands the value of jiu-jitsu. The biggest jiu-jitsu tournaments in the world understand the value of jiu-jitsu. Let's appeal to those people. That's a big enough audience now with 500,000 to 1 million people doing jiu-jitsu in the US alone. How do we go find the 1% of those people or 5% of those people that are like, oh, I want to give back to jiu-jitsu, right? And that's really like our target for our nonprofit funding, because we've had no success with playing the like nonprofit game because it has a reputation for the wrong reasons, in my opinion, right? And to your point, and I think it makes a lot of sense how you're doing the podcast, is 0 to 10 million type thing. It's like these smaller nonprofits are typically the ones that are doing the most impact. The bigger they get, the more bloated they get, the more bureaucratic they get, and I just think that if people really want to make a difference, they should probably not just do the like automated deduction from their paycheck to the United Way. They should go find the local person in the community doing something really cool, or go find the passion, in our case, jiu-jitsu, that they're interested in, and be like, who's doing the best job of doing a nonprofit around this, and then donate to that, not just like, oh, I recognize that name because my grandpa's grandpa like used to donate to that and talk about it. I'm sure it was great in 1942, but today it's not.
I agree with you. I mean, that's part of why I do target the smaller ones. And again, not everyone, you got to do your own vetting, which is what you're talking about. Use your own sense, do your own research, which I think is really important. And I also really like the idea of the younger generation. Well, even in, I think my generation too, a little to a certain extent. But I think in the younger generation, they aren't settling anymore. And I also think that many people don't just want to write a check, although there are a certain number of people who just do that, but they want to get their hands dirty. They want to roll up their sleeves and say, I want to see what this is about. I want to go in and I want to observe. And then in terms of data, which is really interesting, sometimes it's hard to capture the data, or it's more anecdotal. And I find that interesting. I did a podcast of this, I think, fabulous organization. And basically what they do is they have an app, and it is called Win, What I Need. I don't think she realized when she created it that win could also look like gambling, and it's not. But it's What I Need. And it's really for the homeless community to find resources for themselves. And they don't collect names. They collect basic numbers, but no names, because there's a lot of shame associated with it. And many, many people who are homeless because of crisis circumstances, not because they grew up and said, I want to be homeless. Like, that just didn't happen that way. So it also takes a little bit of time to vet, research, and really see what you're connected to. And I think more and more people are doing just that. But I don't disagree with you in terms of the ivory tower kind of view of, I'm up here, I'm better than you, and I know, and I'm going to be colonialistic and tell you how to run your business or how to do this. So I really respect and appreciate your perspective.
Well, I think you said something that resonated with me a minute ago, which is people want to get their hands dirty. They want to see something with their own eyes. And what really made a big difference for us is, so the guy who's the biggest jiu-jitsu star in the world today, his name's Craig Jones. And the reason he's the biggest jiu-jitsu star is he's very good at jiu-jitsu. He's won a lot of tournaments and placed highly in a lot of major tournaments. But the kind of running joke with him is that he always gets second place now. And, he basically makes a joke out of the fact that like he's always not winning. And people love him because his personality.
He's humble.
He has a pretty crazy like profile on social media, if you want to call it that. He's running around the world doing crazy things. But most people are like, dude, like, that's what I do too. Like, I'm not perfect. Like, I like women, or I like to drink beer, or I like to do whatever. And so like people resonate with him versus the jiu-jitsu person who's sitting there and saying like, hey, everything, I'm so perfect. Look at my perfect diet. Look at my perfect regimen. Nobody wants to be perfect.
You can't live up to that.
And so we got him to come to our academy in Peru.
So great.
And he was kind of skeptical, honestly, of it at first. He's like, oh man, if I come here, and he told us this later, like if I come here and these guys just like try to get me to teach a free seminar or something, I'm just going to leave. And he came there and he met the kids. Yeah. He went to their houses. He went to the 2 academies. Now we have 3, but the 2 at the time in Peru.
Yeah.
And he was like blown away, because you can't deny when you actually come there and meet the instructors or see the kids or look at the classes or step foot in the gym, you're like, oh, this is where the money goes, you know? And I think that gives us a huge advantage, right? Because now we're looking at building a new school for these guys, right? And that school is going to allow us to have 4 times as many students or 3.5 times as many students. And so when someone comes and visits Peru, a donor, let's say, comes and visits Peru, they're like, where did my money go? And you're like, right there. I mean, it's very simple. It also creates content for us because you're showing something. You're not theorizing. You're not like, it would be really great if we could get more kids to train and we could like, blah, 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 blah. You're like, no, let's build a freaking bigger school so the more kids can fit on the mat. Does everybody understand that?
Right.
And so I just think that tangible, they left there, his team, and they were like, you guys are doing something tangible. We want to connect with you. We want to sponsor this. We want to be part of this because we want tangible things moving forward, that even if we die, even if our brand goes away, even if we stop running our tournament, this school will still be here 10 years from now, and these kids will still be training here because of the money that we donated and the press that we generated for this activation.
Right. There's a legacy there that is deeper than just a name on a building, 100 million times. And I also love what you said about not only sort of the physical essence of being and being connected, but the fact that this guy is human. There's a humility to him. And that's what I think is what you're talking about that can be missing in others. Because if you can see yourself in someone else, you're willing to try. So if you see someone who you think is like amazing and they're fallible, they're human, it gives you an opportunity to say, I can probably do this too.
Exactly.
And that's beautiful. So I have one last question before we get into our quick and gutsy questions, which are just fun. And usually I get a few pearls now and then. I'd love to hear about an aha moment with one of your kids in any of the programs that you support. Sort of an aha moment where a kid came in and you thought, I don't know, or you kind of had to advise someone who was working with this kid and thought, I don't know. And now the kid has sort of shifted or changed. And I don't know if you've been doing this long enough with kids to sort of see that shift, but I'd love to know if there was an aha moment for you.
So many aha moments. First gym in Oakland, one of the kids who came and trained with us was pretty overweight. He was maybe 15 or 16 years old at the time. He would come to jiu-jitsu, but he wasn't good and didn't train hard, but he came to the gym pretty consistently. I think he liked more of like the social element of it. And today, what's this, 9 years later, whatever it is, we found out maybe a few years ago that, and now, by the way, he's like, I think he's a purple belt and he's competing in competitions. He has a girlfriend. He's lost 100 pounds from his peak. He's like a man, And we found out that he was a week away from joining a gang when he came to Guardian. A Hispanic kid, Mexican kid, and he was joining a Mexican gang, and he's not a tough kid, right? Like he wasn't going to do well. Nobody does well in life at the end.
Right.
He was not going to do well in that life. And so, his whole life, essentially now he has a job. He actually works in jiu-jitsu, and, that's all because he had a place to go and kind of a community to give him an alternative from that world.
I love that story.
Another one that's even more like, holy crap, is we had a kid. And Calder, who works with me, is a great guy. Like, he really cares about these kids. He's kind of like boots on the ground, and like closer to a lot of them, especially when we had our place in Oakland.
Yeah.
But there was a kid and he would come really consistently, but he stopped coming. So he started calling his mom. And the mom was like, I need to get him back in the gym. He's hanging out with the wrong people. So he called, on a Monday, let's say. And then she's like, I'm going to make sure he goes to the gym the next day. He needs to get back in the gym. And so she forced him to come to the gym the next day instead of hanging out with his friends. And all of his friends got shot on the street corner that day that he was supposed to be hanging out with.
Oh my God.
So
what an intervention.
One of them died. So he would have almost for sure been like paralyzed, injured, whatever, maybe a 30, 40% chance he died. if you just didn't come to the gym that day.
Wow.
Honestly, I don't think most people realize how bad like our cities are, like Oakland, Baltimore, these are like horrendous places for most of these kids. And then international, it's even worse, like in Ethiopia, of course, but like, it's like really bad. I mean, like most of these kids do not have two parents. They don't have stable incomes. They don't get forced to go to after school activities. And so they go and do this shit after school all the time.
Yeah.
And like so many of our kids got into gangs. Like we certainly didn't save every kid. We'd see these kids that we started training at 12, 13 years old. And then 2 years later, they're on Instagram with guns, at 15 and showing off their guns. Now they're a gangbanger, and it's just like, it's insane. Like we're a failed society in so many ways that we don't prioritize our youth. We'll spend $100,000 a year to California to lock someone up in prison.
Yeah.
But we won't spend $1,000 a year for a 15-year-old to make sure they have a proper after-school program.
Yeah.
Like it's just like we're good at solving problems once they're too late to fix, but we're not good at like proactive things. And Guardian really is like a proactive solution. And we should be investing in Guardian-like programs as a society, keeping these kids not robbing our houses, not hanging out on street corners, not getting pregnant, all the things that we all want as whether you care about jiu-jitsu or not.
Right.
But instead, we'd rather pay 100 times the cost to throw them in a jail cell as another wasted life for the rest of their life because they kill someone at 17.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I just have to tell you, I got chills from both of those stories for different reasons. And I think many people do realize how bad our cities are, and they close their eyes because their philosophy is not to raise the bar at an early enough age that makes a difference, as you pointed out, but to try to repair it when it's almost too late to repair. And then it becomes a punishment or a punitive rather than a building of self-esteem and self-confidence and capability, which is what jiu-jitsu really offers. And other after-school programs may too, I don't know. But I would love, love, love to see jiu-jitsu as a program and well-run as an after-school program for every kid in the public school system. And the ones who can support it through payment do, and the other ones, you don't know who's who. They just get, if they're on a free lunch program, they automatically get into the program. I would absolutely love to see that. Those are beautiful stories, and I hope there are many more of them to come. So, you ready for our round of quick and gutsies?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. What is at the top of your wish list for Guardian? However, the answer can't be money or funding, which is, of course, the answer for most nonprofits. So I take that out of the equation. So what's at the top of your wish list for Guardian?
I guess that we just continue to sort of become the obvious go-to for people who want to make a difference in this world, right? Like we want to be the easy button for the people who want to give back within jiu-jitsu. And I think like it sounds a little corny when you say it, but like building a brand, right? And, making sure that like everybody who does jiu-jitsu is like, oh, we're the easy button. Like if you want to donate to cancer, you've got like the American Cancer Society or certain names where you're like, I'm going to do that, right? If you care about water, you're going to give to charity water probably. Like we want to become that for jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that'd be so great. And it would really grow your program in so many more places.
I mean, we kind of are becoming that, to be honest. I mean, we're partnering with the UFC, we're partnering with Craig John's Invitational, we're partnering with some of the other big people I can't even say right now, but like, because it's not kind of officially announced, but
it's exciting.
I mean, we're kind of getting there, and now like that success is working, but I think, we still could do 10 times, 100 times more.
Well, I think because your wish is that every kid who can't afford it has the opportunity. So I never want, if you grow super big and you're a big brand, I never want you to lose that core mission of who you are. Because as you pointed out, there are bad actors. You're not one of them. So the growth of that will be the good actors overcoming what maybe is out there, which is great. If you were to think of a song that describes Guardian, what would it be? Or it could be a lyric if you don't think the song. What would be your theme song, so to speak?
And I don't really love her, to be honest, but I just thinking about that Taylor Swift song, the Shake It Out song.
Yeah, Shake It Up. Yeah.
Kind of like fun and makes kids, I mean, that's really what we're doing, right? Like that's the first step before we get into all the other stuff that we do behind the scenes to help. It's like, hey, just come out here, have some fun and shake your body and tumble around a little bit. And, that's the first step to jiu-jitsu really is like, just get them on the mats and get them comfortable and shaking.
Yeah, I love that. I also think in my own upbringing, especially as a female, I think had I been exposed to this at an early age, and I'm guessing this probably happens for a lot of kids altogether, but certainly for me as a female, is you get in touch with your body in a new way. You're sort of growing as a little kid and you kind of don't get your body, or some people don't have that spatial relationship. And I think you're teaching that in a way that also is very protective of the gifts that you were given. You were given this body, let's figure out how to use it effectively. So I love that. And shaking it up is sort of the first step of getting comfortable in your own skin. So I think that's beautiful, really beautiful. What makes Guardian gutsy? You're definitely gutsy. What makes you gutsy?
Well, I mean, I think so many things. I think, the fact that we kind of just did this without really having an exact plan and got it started, like took a little bit of sort of guts to put yourself out there and just like be courageous and just make it work over time. I think the fact that we were able to pivot and sort of go to a different direction that was better took a lot of guts, because it's easy to stick with something, even if it's not your ideal thing. It's hard to pivot into something that's 100 times better sometimes, even if you see the vision, because you get a lot of criticism if you change certain things and don't. And then I think, obviously just with what jiu-jitsu actually is compared to most nonprofits, right? It's something that really, although you're not getting punched in the face, it's very physically demanding and can be hard. And frankly, it's really scary, right? That first day or first week or first month of jiu-jitsu is a pretty scary proposition for most people, right? It's not like a cakewalk, and I think that unknown of just like showing up there, like you kept asking questions around what is the first day like? And it's like, there's a lot of like trepidation there for most people. And I'm sure, frankly, that's why a lot of people never take that first step in the gym, because they don't want to face that fear. So yeah, I think it's kind of a gutsy sport as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of sports are gutsy, but you sort of build up to it. And I think the fact that you go into the gym, it's sort of thrust upon you in a way that allows you to grow with it, but you have to put in that hard work. And it's not always a private lesson that's going to do that. You're part of a community. So I think there's a lot of good in that, but the unknown can be scary for folks. But I think little kids often are not as scared as adults are. It's interesting to watch them. They get excited about using their bodies. What is something that outsiders, or maybe even a few insiders, don't know about Guardian?
I mean, we try to be really transparent, honestly, and I think we have a very kind of like simple model in a lot of ways. I think there's a lot of small things, like the things we talked about earlier, that people don't understand how much like oversight we do or don't have with the different academies and how we sort of recruit them in. There's a lot of small things. Bigger things, I would say that one thing I hear a lot of, they think that we're bigger than we are, right? They say things like, oh man, you guys are just crushing it. Like, I've been watching your social media, whatever. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is we're doing an amazing work and we're helping a lot of kids, but like financially, because we don't get support from the state or the federal government or even these local towns and cities, we're not. Like, we need those people who think this is amazing to like be the ones that help make it happen, even if it's people donate $20 a month.
Right. And
that sponsors a kid in one of these international countries, right? For $20 a month. In Ethiopia, that might sponsor 2 kids a month, right?
Wow.
But there's that disconnect, I think, where sometimes people see your outward persona and what you're putting out, and they think, wow, this is incredible. Like, you don't need my help. I'm going to go help this other thing over here. And so I don't know how to sometimes reconcile that, because you don't want to be depressing. You don't want to be constantly asking for money. You don't want to be constantly putting out the negatives and the bad things in your organization.
Right.
But when you have a bunch of kids smiling and happy doing jiu-jitsu, it looks like everything's perfect and you don't need any help.
Right. That's a really good point. It's a balance between the things that you need and what it can look like to somebody else on the outside. So I love that. I love that you said that. If you could get, and you probably already have, but there may be a few other on your list, because Craig Jones is somebody you already mentioned. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about Guardian, who might that be?
So we kind of have this conundrum right now, I think with the UFC. So the UFC is obviously like now this part of this big publicly traded company, and they have sort of a charitable arm, and their charity really focuses on activations around like the things that they do, like most companies. So they want to sponsor like a nonprofit that's near their LA event or their Miami event or in New York City, because they want to be able to like kind of time it with that stuff. But Dana White, the guy who started the UFC, basically made his name not listening to people, right? And sort of doing the hard thing and being a little bit crazy and not being afraid to get canceled on social media with his political beliefs and all this stuff. And so I think about like, how do we get someone like Dana to say, hey, I know this is what the UFC typically does, but what you're doing is so amazing and it aligns with what we want as far as like what we care about. And I know he sponsors a youth football team in Las Vegas, for example. One of the people from that team is now one of the best players in the NFL. And so like he knows like the power of sponsoring youth sports, right? And so it's just, I think like, how do we convince somebody like him to say, you know what, like For a small amount of the UFC, $1 million a year, $2 million a year, we could get 10,000 kids training around the world every year, something like that, right? Versus like, oh, here's $10,000 to go to one of your gyms so we can check the box type thing.
Right.
And so that's one of the next big steps on the radar, is like starting to land those bigger partners that align with our mission and have a tie-in, but really see the vision of what we are doing, not just in terms of like what'll be good for them for the upcoming press release that they want to do for the fight,
right?
But like what'll be good for this long-term 10-year partnership where we change the world together.
I love that. And you're really influencing young people to be able to grow up to be influencers themselves in whatever they choose to do through the art and the, I think, creative space that jiu-jitsu allows for. So both physically and mentally, it creates a conditioning for an individual that they can use for their whole lives, which is really fabulous.
Exactly.
Any last thoughts or comments that you want to share before we close out the podcast? And how do people reach you? How do people connect with Guardian?
Folks can go to our website at guardiangym.org, guardiangym.org. They can see all of our academies there. They can donate to specific academies or donate to our general fund. They can sign up for our newsletter there to stay in touch. We do like a once a month or so newsletter where we update specifically from one of our schools usually, or what's going on with the organization.
Great.
We have an Instagram account at Guardian Gym that people can follow, as well as a Twitter account, the same one at Guardian Gym. So yeah, I mean, we're not hard to find, hard to get a hold of. Google Guardian Gym and you can find us through whatever your preferred method is. And then you can email us info@guardiangym.org if you want to send an email.
That's great. I just want to take a moment and thank you for this conversation. I loved it. I learned a lot. I love, honestly, how you iterated into where you are today, and your vision is going forward to maximize the number of kids who will have an opportunity to be in this program. And I just think there's nothing more beautiful than celebrating and pushing forward the next gen who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity that you're giving them. So thank you. Thank you for being on Small and Gutsy. I hope you don't remain small, but you'll always be gutsy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good luck with the rest of your shows.
Please go to smallandgutsy.org to check out all of our episodes. And if you're so inclined, please purchase some Small and Gutsy merchandise, consider sponsoring an episode, or making a donation. Both are tax deductible and help keep us going and spotlighting these great organizations. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and don't reflect the position or views of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, the donors, the sponsors, and my incredible board of directors, Brianna Carmichael, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Ari McCoy, Melissa Greitz, and Serena Rajabian, who believed in me in this project enough so to sign on to support this effort, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. And thank you for listening. Together, we are spreading social impact, and you can help us. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to email me the name of any organization you feel would benefit from being interviewed. From small and gutsy to big with impact. I'm Dr. Laura Shirk-Witkoff, and thanks for listening.